We're more than halfway through 2024, and there's been no official news for a new JoJo anime adaptation. It's been over 3 years since the announcement of Stone Ocean, so Steel Ball Run should be on the horizon. First of all, let's consider the simple question. Will Steel Ball Run even be animated?
Yes.
Obvious answer is yes, because come on, JoJo is such a popular series, of course they'll animate a fan favorite part. But the question on everyone's mind right now is when? If you dig a little deeper, you'll find that there are more questions about the adaptation than you think. There are many challenges the production will have to face in order for Steel Ball Run to appear on your screens. For example, did you know that the producers originally planned for Part 6 to be the last part animated? There are also a number of rumors and leaks floating out there too. Uncertainty about the release date and the studio responsible for the animation. What about the release format? Batch releases or JoJo Fridays? I'm going to answer all of these questions, so saddle up on your horses and get ready for a wild ride. But I do have to include a disclaimer that this video will contain speculation, however, it's all based on careful examination of facts and past information. Not to toot my own horn, but I've been pretty spot on when it comes to analyzing and predicting topics like these. Alright, I know you're on the edge of your seat, so let's start the deep dive by addressing the rumors. In February, a leaker claimed that Steel Ball Run is in production coming fall 2024 or early 2025. In April, a different leaker made a similar claim that Steel Ball Run will be receiving an anime adaptation. Of course, both of these are quite broad statements because it should be no surprise that one of the most beloved JoJo parts is getting adapted. However, there is some merit to these statements. If we look at previous JoJo parts, they have each received an anime adaptation 2 years apart from each other. Parts 1 and 2 in 2012, Part 3 in 2014, Part 4 in 2016, you get the idea. If we were to follow this trend, we should be getting Part 7 sometime this year. I know we got Batch 1 of Stone Ocean in December of 2021, but I'm going by the Japanese broadcast timeframe of winter 2022. But judging from the lack of information in the first half of 2024, the chances of a 2024 release is basically slim to none. You would think that would lead me to agree with many others that the Steel Ball Run anime will be coming in 2025, but I have my reservations. If everything goes right, then yes, Steel Ball Run could come in 2025 at the earliest, but with everything we know and everything happening recently, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Part 7 adapted until 2026 or later. I'll go into more detail in a bit, but let's talk about the news from this year. So far, the only event we've had was the JoJo World event in March, which would be the perfect time for some sort of teaser if they were aiming for a fall 2024 release. But JoJo World is actually more of a recurring event, unlike the Joestar Inherited Soul special event that held Stone Ocean's announcement. In fact, JoJo World came back to the US for Anime Expo in July this year, and even then, no teasers or new information. There's still a sliver of possibility of a 2024 release if Part 7 follows the footsteps of Part 5, but that's extremely unlikely. What do I mean by this? On June 21st of 2018, Araki announced the anime adaptation for Golden Wind at the Ripples of Adventures event.
ジョジョのアニメの第5部っていうところがありまして、黄金の風っていうのが、この秋からスタートしますので、その辺もよろしくお願いいたします。
The anime made its debut in October of the same year, a short turnaround time of 4 months. We're well past that June 21st date, but for all the hopeful fans out there could be an announcement as late as August that would still make a 2024 release possible if Part 7 somehow pulls a Part 5. Again, that's probably not going to happen, but it's still worth mentioning. In fact, I'd feel more comfortable if Steel Ball Run was released at the earliest second half of 2025. Despite being the most anticipated part for an adaptation, I think I speak for everyone when I say I'd rather the studio takes their time than rushing to get the anime out. It would be a huge disappointment to the community if it doesn't live up to the expectations. That aside, there are other potential reasons why Steel Ball Run will be pushed back later compared to the previous parts. The situation gets more and more complicated the deeper you dig. There's a lot to go through, so let's address each issue one by one, starting with one of the other rumors floating around. And that is the potential for a change in animation studios from longtime partner David Productions.
Oh my god!
Shocking, right? I know what you're thinking, but they've been animating all the JoJo parts up until now, why would someone else do it? Some rumors have said David Productions will animate Part 7, but just like predicting a 2025 release, it's the safest thing to say without any official information. But I'm here to do a deep dive into everything about the production, so I have to address this because there is a hint of truth to it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying for certain that David Productions is out, but I will be explaining why this claim was made and my opinion on its validity. That's what you're here for, right? Not for me to regurgitate what has been said, but to find new information. To be fair, the original tweet did say to take it with a grain of salt and was later deleted, so the credibility isn't that high, but it's still worth talking about because this user has been cited for other leaks for other series. But again, take that as you will. Like I said earlier, there is the possibility of a studio change given what we know. That's why I want to address how and why it could happen so that people won't be completely blindsided by the change if it happens. So let's talk about the why. We have to go back to a Netflix podcast in 2022 starring the voice actress of Jolene, Ferus Ai, and the series director Kenichi Suzuki. In that podcast, it was revealed that the production committee had only planned on animating up to Stone Ocean. This means that there weren't any plans for Part 7 or 8 after wrapping up Part 6. It makes sense because at the time, Part 7 had just finished its serialization, and Part 6 would have been a good stopping point because of what happens at the end of the story. Obviously, with how popular the series has become over the years, an anime adaptation for the other parts is definitely on the table. Parts 1 to 6 being included in the original plan is likely the reason why each adaptation was so consistent with its 2-year schedule. And now that the plan has run its course, a lot of things are up in the air, not just the gap between anime adaptations. We'll go more into depth with these things later. One of these things include the potential for a change in studios. This type of change is quite common in the industry. One Punch Man was changed from Madhouse to JC Staff after Season 1. The first to third seasons of Attack on Titan was animated by Wit Studio until MAPPA took over for the final season. Who knows, maybe MAPPA will take over JoJo too. Considering their resume, how well do you think MAPPA would handle animating JoJo if it landed with them? Let me know what you think in the comments. However, if we consider how long David Productions has adapted the series and how well they've done with parts 1 through 6, the relationship between all parties must be pretty close-knit. In interviews from 2015 and 2019, the studio frequently consulted Araki to select what songs to be used as endings for the anime. But you might already know that. A lesser-known fact comes from Part 4. An interview in 2017 stated Araki personally approached the studio because he wanted them to add some foreshadowing scenes for Kira at the beginning of the show. In that same interview, it is revealed that the color schemes used in the anime were given the seal of approval by Araki. Similarly, the addition of Fugo's backstory in Part 5 was also approved by Araki himself. When it came to the anime, Araki stated that he originally thought the series wasn't suitable for TV, but was surprised that the show has gotten so big and glad that the fans enjoyed it. This speaks to the credit of David Productions and how well they were able to recreate the magic from the manga and gaining the approval from the creator himself. So it goes to show that Araki will probably be on board with the studio for future adaptations. But even if Araki approves of David Productions, he's not the only voice that has a say in this matter. There's still a series of checkpoints to go through in order to get to the finish line. I'm not just talking about the typical steps that every production has to take. Things like pre-production and planning how to adapt a series, like what to include in each episode, the in-production phase where the bulk of the animating and compositing happens, or post-production with the recording and editing and finishing touches. These are all standard procedures when it comes to any show or movie production, but the Steel Ball Run production has more to worry about. Unfortunately, longtime executive producer of the series, Hiroyuki Omori, has passed away. He worked for Warner Bros. Japan and was the one who spearheaded the creation of the anime back in 2012. The move to select David Productions as the animation studio was made by him as well. Obviously, this is a tragic loss for the community and will likely impact the production of Steel Ball Run in one way or another. At this moment, we have no news on who will be stepping up to fill his position. But keep in mind, when it comes to a series and production this big, there are multiple producers working on the same project. Toshiyasu Hayashi is one of the producers Omori has worked with closely throughout the years, so he would likely take on a good portion of the responsibilities of the late producer. Even then, Omori wouldn't be the only prominent member to leave the production team. Shunichi Ishimoto, a longtime animation director of the series, has left David Productions after a decade of service. He has been involved in the series since 2012 and was the animation director and chief animation director from Stardust Crusaders to Golden Wind, and most recently Rohan OVA. As for Stone Ocean, he may not have been a director, but he was still involved as a stand designer. The hole left by the departure of these two will surely have an impact on the schedule of Steel Ball Run. And that's just a portion of the things to consider. There's a couple things I mentioned earlier that need to be discussed in further detail. The original plan to go up until Part 6 means that renegotiations are in place for all parties. Up until now, we focus on the animation studio, but we haven't considered the people in charge of the publishing. These are the people that have the green light to production and have a huge influence on who gets the rights to the animating, streaming, and distribution aspects of the show. There are three agencies that own different parts of JoJo: Lucky Land Communications, Warner Brothers Japan, and Shueisha. You might have seen Viz Media on products involving JoJo and wonder why I didn't mention them. They are responsible for handling the physical distribution of the anime and manga here in North America, but they're a subsidiary of Shueisha, so they don't have much influence on these decisions. I felt like I should clarify since a majority of my viewers are from North America. So Lucky Land Communications, Araki's manga studio, owns the right to the series. Since Araki owns the series, it's up to him to give the rights of the series to the other two agencies I mentioned. Shueisha owns the publishing rights, while Warner Brothers owns the rights to the anime. Obviously, Araki will have a say in the production, but rather than worrying about the anime, he's definitely more focused on the manga. He might make some suggestions here or there, but is usually hands-off when it comes to the production. This is a similar situation with Shueisha. Even though they have producers for the show, their responsibility lies mainly with the printed media. The primary role for the producers from Shueisha is to make sure the anime doesn't conflict or deviate from the original work. This means that Warner Brothers' job is to preside over the bulk of the animation production, including the decision of choosing an animation studio. Even though Omori, who was the one to initially reach out to David Productions, has passed away, I'm sure the two companies have established some sort of relationship, so the most likely scenario will be for them to continue their partnership for Steel Ball Run. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? This is the most likely and realistic, and also dare I say, best outcome for all the JoJo fans out there. So that makes two likely approvals from Warner and Araki for David Productions. That's why moving forward, I'll continue with the assumption that David Productions will be in charge of Part 7. That's good and all, but once again, we're looking at this from the side of the people in charge. It seems like there's always something else to the story, but it's not a deep dive if I don't cover everything. Remember when I said renegotiation on both sides? It's not just as simple as Warner Brothers wanting David Productions and that's it. There may be limiting factors on David Productions' end, such as differences in visions or prior commitments. David Productions is not a big studio when it comes to size. They have 91 employees, which is on the lower end in the industry. Other studios on a similar caliber, like Studio Pierrot, A1, and UFO Table, average around 200-ish employees. A studio like MAPPA has over 400 employees at their company, most likely due to how many projects they've been taking on in recent years. Even then, it doesn't seem like that's enough, since there are plenty of stories of employees being overworked. What's even crazier is Toei at 800 plus employees, but they are in charge of huge projects like Dragon Ball and so it's warranted. But enough about other companies, let's get back to David Productions. If we look at their releases, the size of their studio corresponds to them averaging about one show a year, and their focus in this past year seemed to be Undead Unluck. But now that Undead Unluck is finished, Steel Ball Run is in production, right? Well, it was recently announced that Season 3 of Fire Force is coming in 2025. Yep, it's been almost 5 years since the first two seasons of Fire Force came out in 2019, and 2 years since the announcement for Season 3. As a fan of both series, I think Fire Force deserved to get Season 3 first. What this means is that David Productions staff will be focused more on Season 3 of Fire Force, and Steel Ball Run will likely be pushed back again because of that. This is why I stated that I wouldn't be surprised if Part 7 came out after 2025. But let's say David Productions already had Fire Force Season 3 almost wrapped up, and Part 7 is the focus now. There's still things to consider when it comes to planning a production. As I've said before, the plan was to stop at Part 6. From Warner's perspective, after deciding on the animation studio, they have to decide how far in the future they want to plan this time. Should they let the studio animate just Part 7 or Part 8 as well? Part 9 is still in serialization, and it'll be years before that would be in consideration. If Part 9 is like Part 8, we'd be waiting over 10 years for it to finish, and even if it were like Part 7, that's still 7 years. I can't give you a concrete answer, but in this day and age, it would be smart to isolate each part and make plans individually. This would leave some breathing room on both sides in case anything changes in the future. The animation studio, which parts to animate, now let's talk about the length. In today's market, the number of episodes and the scheduling is an integral part of what every show has to account for. With how many series there are out there, every show has to fight for a slot and sometimes have to be split up into different parts. This system known as a core has been around for many years, but has become increasingly popular nowadays to do split cores due to workload or competitive scheduling. Everything is being animated nowadays. We got things like Vending Machine Isekai, and wives turning into an elementary kid, the anime, the market is a lot more saturated than it was just a couple years ago. So let's talk about how I think Steel Ball Run will approach this issue. When it comes to the length of Steel Ball Run, the manga clocks in at almost 4,300 pages over the course of 7+ years, second in page and serialization length to JoJolion. Of the parts that have been adapted, Part 4 comes in the closest at around 3,500 pages. Since Part 4, the anime adaptations have been pretty consistent with the episode counts at 39 episodes per season and Stone Ocean at 38 episodes. This is the equivalent of 3 cours since the standard is about 12 to 13 episodes for a cour. Since we're operating under the assumption that David Productions will be animating Part 7, they could opt to continue animating the next part at 39 episodes. However, since the new production will require separate planning from the other parts, I think this would be a great time to switch it up. I know earlier I said if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but in this case, I think we would like to see some changes. Compared to the other parts, Steel Ball Run has much more content, meaning a switch to 48 episodes is more than reasonable for a part as lengthy and beloved as this one. Not to mention, 39 episode seasons aren't the norm in the industry. Most anime are 12 or 24 episodes per season, give or take 1 or 2 episodes. Off the top of my head, JoJo is the only one I can name that has 39 episodes consistently for the past 3 adaptations. Granted, they could pull a Bleach and make it 52 episodes, but I think that's a little less likely. There's a lot more source material compared to the previous parts, but one thing David Productions is good at is condensing the content of the anime without leaving any important details out of the original. There's not that much bloat, which creates a tight-knit viewing experience. It's something that's quite underrated when it comes to their productions. In my personal opinion, I think this is one of the reasons why the current JoJo anime has done so well in the past 10 years. The lack of drawn-out sequences or 2-minute recaps at the beginning of each episode does wonders for the pacing of the show. This isn't me saying I don't want more JoJo. If David Productions can make the show 52 episodes without it feeling like it's dragged out, then that's great for everyone. But 48 just seems like the magic number if we consider both the pacing of the show and conforming to industry standards. After all, 48 episodes is something DP has done for the series in the past. Stardust Crusaders was 48 episodes split into 2 parts. And if we were to compare Part 3 to Part 7, it has almost 1,300 less pages worth of material to adapt from. Some fans have complained that Part 3 was a little too lengthy, but it doesn't seem like that would be an issue when it comes to Steel Ball Run. So my expectations would be somewhere in the 48 episode range, could fluctuate with an extra episode or 1 less episode like Stone Ocean. Regardless of how many episodes Part 7 will be, we now have to talk about the elephant in the room, the release schedule. By that, I mean whether or not we'll get batch releases like we did with Part 6. The hope is to have the entire adaptation air consecutively like it has been for Parts 1 through 5. But again, the market is quite competitive.
自動販売機に生まれ変わった俺は迷宮をさまようアニメ化企画進行中
It really depends on what other anime are also airing during that season. Like, if some other heavy hitters like JJK or My Hero are on air, those will definitely be taking up more broadcast time than some other smaller titles. Even a series like JoJo couldn't escape this fate in Japan. Even though Netflix released it in batches, Stone Ocean aired weekly on Japanese TV in 3 separate cours. And as much as I hate to say it, I can see Steel Ball Run doing the same thing with split cours. Even for a series like Bleach, which is just as prominent and classic as JoJo, its 52 episode season was split into 4 cours with Part 3 coming later this year. But the good news is, if we are getting 48 episodes, which in my opinion is quite likely, then it'll most likely be split into 2 full cours, aka 2 parts with 24 episodes each, just like Stardust Crusaders. For those who have read the manga, the Sugar Mountain arc seems like a good place to split the series up. It's about halfway through the story, and whether part 1 ends with this arc or picks up here would work out really well. Trying to avoid some spoilers, but the arc before it has something quite pivotal that happened, and after this arc, the story really ramps up. It begins to focus on the main villain, which I would consider as the second half of the series. It runs parallel to Stardust Crusaders, how the first half is getting to Egypt, and the second half is focused primarily on details about Dio. If you read Part 7, where do you think would be good places to split up the series if it's in half or in quarters? Now the next step to consider are the streaming rights. The streaming rights have been a hot topic of debate due to how Netflix handles Stone Ocean. With a new production, there are several ways Steel Ball Run can escape the Stone Ocean batch treatment. Once again, we have three parties with horses in the Steel Ball Run race: Crunchyroll, Netflix, and Disney+. And again, you might be wondering, aren't I missing Warner Brothers' own streaming service, Max? It doesn't seem like the platform is too interested in claiming a share in the anime market right now. Besides the Ghibli films, most of the anime shows on Max can be found on other streaming services, so it's unlikely they'll be fighting for the streaming rights of Steel Ball Run. Now back to the big three of streaming. Since 2012, Crunchyroll has been the host of the anime up until Golden Wind. It wasn't until Stone Ocean when Netflix got the streaming rights to the adaptation. If you think about it, there's no way Crunchyroll would suddenly give up the streaming rights after 10 years. So the most likely reason is that Netflix outbid them. As we all know, Netflix has a lot of money to spend. Ever since the pandemic, on-demand streaming, or in our case, anime streaming, has skyrocketed in popularity. Netflix wanted a piece of that JoJo pie, and they got what they wanted with Part 6. That's a similar story with Disney+. They wanted to break into the anime market, so they started acquiring the streaming rights for popular anime as well. The most well-known example is the newest season of Bleach, but they have been adding more anime to the platform in general in the past few years. But I don't see anime on Disney+, and that's probably because you live in the US. Those titles are on Hulu, which was acquired by Disney in 2023. It seems like they want to separate the two because 1, more money, and 2, Disney Plus in the West seems to be geared more towards a younger audience. But if you use a VPN, you can access those titles and previous seasons of JoJo on the platform. I have a separate video where I go into detail about JoJo being on Disney Plus and the implications it brings, so check that out if you want to know more. Personally, I'd like for Part 7 to be on Crunchyroll since anime is its primary export unlike the other two services. It's a more focused experience because if you like JoJo, you tend to like other anime as well. It has a bigger library than the other two services I mentioned, so it's easier to find other shows. I also like being able to interact with others in the comments and share my excitement for each episode. So it's a big shame they decided to get rid of it. I hope they bring it back someday. Regardless, Crunchyroll is at a disadvantage when it comes to bidding power. In an all-out bidding war, Disney would win because they're Disney. However, the execs might have reason to lean towards Netflix instead. Money is important, but the reality is Netflix is the most popular platform of the three. Despite its changes to account sharing, Netflix has seen an increase of 39 million users, making 2024 the best year it's had with 260 million users. In comparison, Disney Plus only had upwards of 160 million, a whopping gap of 100 million users. Like I said, money isn't everything, so it might be worth it for those in charge to take a little less in exchange for more exposure to the franchise. Bigger audience equals bigger reach, and in turn, better sales. So for this one, even I'm not too sure who will end up with the streaming rights for Steel Ball Run. We'll just have to wait and see for this one. But there is one thing I'm pretty positive on, and it's that batch releases won't be something we should worry about. I know the idea of Netflix potentially handling Part 7 will upset some people, but it might not be all bad if it does happen. Let me explain. Despite the batch releases being unpopular with longtime fans, many new and casual fans are fine with being able to binge multiple episodes at once. This is a big reason why Netflix has grown so big over the years. And even if Part 7 landed on Netflix, I have some good news for you guys. In the past 2 years, Netflix has been experimenting with a weekly release format for various anime series. Even in 2021, when Stone Ocean premiered on Netflix, Season 2 of Komi Can't Communicate was one of the shows Netflix was releasing in a weekly format. Even more recently, Delicious in Dungeon, or Dungeon Meshi, which finished airing not too long ago, followed the same weekly format. It seems like Netflix is more open to the idea of weekly releases going forward. So if Steel Ball Run comes to the platform, they could very well go with weekly instead of batch releases. This was definitely a big issue for the community, and I'm sure someone at Netflix was made aware of the situation. So hopefully they listen to the feedback for Part 7 so that we get JoJo Fridays back. Now that's a lot of information to digest. I went over a lot of things today. Planning the season, finding a studio, producing the series, negotiating with partners, and finding distributors are all stages that the show must go through in order to be released. And what is the conclusion I reach after examining all these different steps? I think we'll have David Productions animating a 48-episode season coming sometime in the second half of 2025, but probably later. At the end of the day, this is just my speculation and nothing is confirmed until the official announcements. I'd say based on the reasons I've laid out, it seems like a pretty logical conclusion. Despite this being one of my longer videos and a deeper dive, I had to condense a lot of information and try to keep it mostly contained to information from previous JoJo productions. Otherwise, I would have had to go on multiple tangents in order to get into the nitty-gritty of both David Productions and Warner Brothers' past work and productions. Even for the JoJo information, I didn't want to get too long-winded and get into spoilers. For example, I would have liked to get more into the Sugar Mountain arc in the episode length section. If there was something you disagree with or something I didn't consider, let me know in the comments and I'll pin a clarification or a correction to my statements. Or if you agree with me, let me know in a comment or by liking the video. One last thing before I end the video, and it's something I haven't discussed. I said I was going to talk about the production of the series, but I left out one thing: CGI Horses. It's definitely something that is a concern to fans, but I don't see it being a big issue for the production, so no significant delays in that sense. This is a topic I want to touch upon in a future video, so stay subscribed so you don't miss that one. Until next time, Wong Diggity out.